Hey guys, Plonkerboy900 here with another challenge video. Before we get started with today's video, huge thanks goes to today's sponsor, Dragon City. Dragon City is a free-to-play mobile game available on both iOS and Android devices. It's also available on Windows and Amazon. If you like Pokemon, and the chances are if you're watching this then you do, then you might just fall in love with Dragon City. Like Pokemon, there are hundreds of different dragons to collect and battle with, and the game even has breeding mechanics like Pokemon where you can breed 2 dragons to get new ones. Feed and train up these dragons and take them into battle. There are multiple PvP modes to fight in real time with your friends, as well as weekly events, which means there's always something new to do in Dragon City. You can also find some of your favourite YouTubers in Dragon City as well, including Mr. Beast, Dream and Laserbeam just to name a few. Click the link in the description below and you'll receive a free reward of 15,000 food and 30,000 gold to use in game. That's not all though, you'll also get the rare Fire Knight Dragon as well. Keep in mind though that you will need the most recent version of the game to receive these rewards. So, if you love games like Pokemon and you're looking for a fresh take on the monster collecting genre, then why not give Dragon City a try today using the link in the description below. Remember to use the link in the description to get your special reward, and really give yourselves a head start. Huge thanks again to Dragon City for sponsoring today's video. Now let's begin today's challenge. So, I was looking for some new ROM hacks to play recently, and I came across this one, Pokémon MOON BLACK 2. This is a ROM hack of Black 2 version that incorporates Pokemon and characters from Generation 6 and 7. The idea of this really did intrigue me, as the game promised fully animated 2D sprites for all the new Pokemon. When I saw this, I just had to see it for myself. And to do so, I decided I would bring back one of my most popular series for this game. Today we find out, can you beat Pokemon MOON BLACK 2 using only gift Pokemon? I'm pretty sure this game uses Drayano's Blaze Black 2 as a base, so a lot of the gift Pokemon you can actually get in this game are the same, but there are a few changes along the way, including the starters of course. This game also features a handful of new regional variants, which as you probably know, I'm a complete sucker for, so hopefully we get one of these for our team. The rules are very simple. I can only use gift Pokemon in battle. These are Pokemon that get given to me as opposed to catching them in the wild, but I can catch Pokemon for HM should I need them. No items in battle either, and that's pretty much it. Before we get started, shout out goes to these people who found the Dabbing Delibird last time. He's in this one too, so comment down below if you see him for a chance to be featured next time. With all that said and done, let's get on with today's challenge. I start the game picking the female character and call her Echidna. Comment down below if you get the reference. Our rival is the edgy Gladion in this game, so it only seems fitting to call him Zwigo. As you might expect, the starters in this game aren't the original Gen 5 ones, but in fact the ones from Sun and Moon. Now, I'm a huge fan of Rowlet, so there was no way I was choosing anyone but that. I mean, come on, just look at that face. We face off against Zwigo in our first rival fight, and we promptly lose because Litten has Ember. I mean, let's just move on, I don't want to talk about it. I do get my revenge though in the second rival fight. His first Pokemon Rockruff is an easy KO with Razor Leaf, and out comes Litten. In order to win this I need a critical hit, but thankfully Razor Leaf has a high crit ratio, so we do get one on the first attempt, and after healing with an Oran Berry he just keeps going for Tackle and Lick instead of Ember, so we can slowly chip away, and eventually get the win. Before facing the first gym though, Rowlet evolves into Dartrix, and instead of Sharon it's actually the main character from Black and White 2, Nate. This gym was no joke though, we lost so many times to this. His first Pokemon is a Scyther, which to be honest isn't that bad of a Pokemon to beat. A few pecks see to it no problem, but it's his next Pokemon type Null, which is just a complete brick wall. Not only does it outspeed us, but he must have the Eviolite as well, as Razor Leaf does next to nothing. Then he just takes us out with an Aerial Ace, so I was going to need to do some training. I try again at level 20, and this time we finally get the win. Scyther's at first, but it's just an easy 2-hit KO with Peck, and now that type Null comes back out again. Razor Leaf still isn't doing that much, but we outspeed now and he just goes for Workup, and after taking one more he goes for Swagger. This doubles our attack stat, so thankfully we don't hit ourselves in confusion and one more Razor Leaf does take it out, and now we just need to beat his final Pokemon Growlithe. We could be in trouble here if we hit ourselves, but thankfully we don't, and a single peck is all we need to get the win. Trust me though, that was not an easy first gym. Upon arriving in Burbank City, we can actually get a new gift Pokemon. You can get one of 4 starter Pokemon depending on the season, and the one that we happen to get is Cyndaquil. This isn't any normal Cyndaquil though. This is a Fire Steel regional variant. I'm definitely looking forward to having this on the team. I do some training evolving it into Quilava in the process, and now we take on the second gym leader, Roxy. She starts off with an Alolan Grimer, so I lead off with our new Quilava, as we're immune to poison. One Flame Wheel does over half, and in return her Mud Slap does hardly anything despite it being 4 times super effective, and we take it out with one more Flame Wheel. Next up is Croagunk though, so I swap into Dartrix, as we have the super effective Stab Peck, which after being hit by a Fake Out, brings it down to red health. She just goes for a nasty plot though and then heals up with a super potion, so we just outspeed and take it out with 2 more Pecks. And next up is Toxapex. This really scared me as this is quite a powerful Pokemon for the second gym, and as you can see our Razor Leafs do hardly anything, and we go down in a couple of hits. It's just down to Quilava now, but thankfully this thing must not have a water move, as it just goes for Bite. We then get very lucky and get a lot of flinches with Headbutt, which means we can slowly chip away at its health, and finally take it out. Her last Pokemon is just the pre-evolved form of Toxapex, so this is just an even easier time. She fails a Toxic and then we get a flinch on the second hit, which means we can just take it out with one more Headbutt, and win ourselves the second badge. Now we arrive in Castelia City, we can actually get ourselves some more Pokemon. There's a couple more starters available to us, the first of which being a Mudkip. Oh god, no. I suppose I have no choice this time but to use it. I evolve it into a Marshtomp, and get my next gift Pokemon, which happens to be a Bulbasaur. We do already have a grass type starter, but I guess it'll do for now, as there's not really much else that we can use. I evolve it into an Ivysaur, and take on the third gym leader, Illimer. He starts off with a Alolan Raticate, so I lead off with Quilava, and go straight for the Iron Head. His Crunch does hardly anything and we take it out with a critical hit for a one-shot, and next up is Gumshoes. Again I go for the Iron Head and we get the flinch this time, and I was hoping for a second flinch, but we just straight up murder it with another Iron Head. I switch in Ivysaur for his next Pokemon Eevee, and after taking a takedown I go for the Leech Seed to get some health back, and this means we can survive one more takedown, and do some small damage with a Razor Leaf. He does fully heal up the next turn though of course, but we can hit one more Razor Leaf before I decide to switch out, and go back into Quilava again. He just ends up missing the takedown though, so I can just go for an Iron Head to finish it off, and next up is a Alolan Persian. We get hit by a Fake Out and we can see that this thing has a Life Orb, which could cause some problems, but thankfully we resist his stab moves, so while Bite doesn't do that much, we do get flinched. He then flinches us yet again, so I decide to break it with a Quick Attack, but we go down shortly after, but he's doing quite a lot of damage to himself, so I can just send in Dartrix, and finish it off with a Pluck. His last Pokemon is Smeargle, and this thing doesn't bother me in the slightest, as it's just really weak. He does sketch our move Pluck, which means he has a super effective move against us, but one Pluck of our own brings him down below half, and after he hits us with one, we just take it out with one more for the win. That's 3 badges down already. Before moving on though, there's a fight with Colress, and let me tell you, this was the most difficult fight of the run so far. I genuinely have over an hour and a half of attempts of this one fight. It took a lot of grinding to be able to beat this guy, but we did eventually do it. First up is Magnemite, so I start with Marshtomp, and this thing has the air balloon, so I have to use Tackle first, and after taking a Signal Beam I can just take it out with a Mud Shot, and next up is Rotom Fan, so I switch in Quilava. I get the Quick Claw boost, which means we can go for a Smackdown, which is not only super effective, but it means we can use ground moves on it too, so now I switch back into Marshtomp and take a Thunderbolt because we're immune to it, and go for the Mud Bomb. It brings it down to red health, and I know he's going to heal, so I go for the Mud Shot next turn, and lower its speed. We're now faster, so we can hit one more before we finally go down, but now I can just switch in Quilava once again, and take it out with one more Smackdown. Matang is up next, so I switch in Ivysaur, and the only thing I'm trying to do here is get a Leech Seed on it, which we do successfully, as his Bulldoze doesn't really do any damage. He does go for a Psyshock the next turn though, which does huge damage to us, as I just hit a weak Razor Leaf for some small damage, before going down to an Iron Head. I switch Quilava back in again, and just go for the super effective Flame Wheel for the knockout, and next up is the regional form of Croconaw. This is a water electric type, so I go for the Razor Leaf of Dartrix as we get paralysed, but it's not quite enough. He then hits an Ice Fang which does massive damage, but we do hang on and take it out with one more Razor Leaf, and now we just need to take out his last Pokemon, Porygon. Thankfully we get incredibly lucky with Quilava's Iron Head getting flinches, to the point where he doesn't even get a single hit. It takes 4 to take it out, but we do finally manage, and finally beat Colress. We now make our way to the 4th gym, and train the team up a little bit, getting some evolutions in the process. Quilava evolves into Typhlosion, Dartrix evolves into Decidueye, and Ivysaur evolves into Venusaur. With our newly evolved team, we take on the 4th gym leader Mallow. She uses grass types and starts off with a Roselia, so I lead off with Venusaur. This thing must have Eviolite as Double Edge does next to nothing, as she sets up spikes. I then just go for a Venoshock which does decent damage as well, but she just heals it all back with the Synthesis. I decide to switch out and go into Typhlosion, as she goes for spikes again. Thankfully 1 Flame Wheel is all we need to get the KO, and next up is Nuzleaf, so I just stay in. Again 1 Flame Wheel takes it out, and next up is Go-Goat. We get a critical hit which brings her down to a Focus Sash, as she goes for the Rock Slide for a small amount, and then she just heals up with a Hyper Potion so we can bring it back down to red with 1 more, and finish it off with a 3rd. Leafeon's up next and goes for the takedown, but even with a crit it does hardly any damage, and again we bring it down to red health. We survive a second one as well and take it out with the 2nd Flame Wheel, and we're already down to her final Pokemon Sceptile, who gets a critical hit crunch but we still survive easily, and just take it out with a single Flame Wheel. That was pretty much a clean sweep there. We win badge number 4, and on our way to the next gym we evolve Marshtomp into Swampert. Oh god, I can't look at it. Before facing the 5th gym though, there's actually a surprise fight with Ash, but to be honest he was quite easy. Pikachu goes down in a single Bulldoze from Swampert, and next up is Lycanroc, who also goes down in a couple of Bulldozes, after healing up with a full restore. Last up is Torracat though, so 2 Water Guns are all we need for the KO, and we easily beat Ash. Go back to the anime where you belong. We now arrive in Driftvale City where we can get our next team member, but first we need to beat Plumeria, which we do with ease, and afterwards she gives us a Wimpod. I'm really happy about this as Golisopod is one of my favourite Gen 7 Pokemon, and its useless ability doesn't exist in this game. I evolve it at level 30, and as you can see it has Swift Swim, which is actually a really good ability for this thing to have. We also get ourselves a type Null here, which is actually a shiny one as well. I don't know if I'll keep this on the team the whole time, but at least for now it will be our 6th member. Now we can finally take on the 5th gym leader, Sophocles? No idea. Anyway, he starts off with an Ampharos. I lead off with Swampert and go for the Bulldoze, which does about half, as he hits back with the Signal Beam. He does have leftovers though, so he survives the second one, and then just fully heals, but we do eventually manage to take it out before we go down ourselves. I switch in Golisopod for his next Pokemon Graveler, and it's the Alolan variant too. I forgot I didn't have a water move on this thing, so I just go for X-Scissor for small damage, as he hits us with a Stone Edge. I'm able to hit 1 more before we go down, so now I can just switch into Venusaur and finish it off with a Bulldoze. I switch into Decidueye for his next Pokemon Feraligatr, and by the way I really love this design. He outspeeds and hits us with a Crunch but we just hang on, and hit back with a Razor Leaf for some good damage, but he's faster so we can't hit our second Razor Leaf, and we go down to 1 more Crunch, so I switch in Venusaur once again, and take it out with a Petal Dance. Next up is Vikavolt, so I switch in Typhlosion, and just go straight for the Flame Wheel which does massive damage, as he just raises his speed with agility, and this does mean that he outspeeds the next turn, but we survive the incoming Thunderbolt, and take it out with another Flame Wheel. His final Pokemon is Togedemaru, so I switch in Venusaur again, and I was hoping to go for the Bulldoze here, but I get taken out by a Fake Out and Iron Head combo, so I just switch in Typhlosion once again, and after taking an Iron Head like it's nothing, I can retaliate with a Bulldoze for an easy 1-hit KO, winning us the 5th gym badge. The 6th gym leader is Fairy user Mina, but I think the Fairy type is actually bugged in this game, as they don't seem to have any type matchups at all, so Wigglytuff, despite being a Fairy type, is hit super effectively by Low Sweep. It still doesn't do that much though, and she hits back with a Flamethrower, which we do survive, but we can't hit a second one before we go down to another Flamethrower, so I send in Typhlosion. As you can see, Iron Head isn't super effective, so it doesn't take it out and we get hit by another Flamethrower, but we're able to hit a Fire Punch the next turn to take it out, and I switch in Venusaur for Primarina. I outspeed and go for a Petal Dance which does over half, as she goes for the Psychic for huge damage. We do hang on though and take it out with the second Petal Dance, and next up is Alolan Ninetales, so I switch in Golisopod. She goes for the Ice Gem boosted Ice Beam, which we do somehow survive even though it's a critical hit, and hit back with a Razor Shell for okay damage, but I'm pretty sure we're going to go down the next turn, so I go for Sucker Punch to get as much damage in as I can, and sure enough we go down to a Blizzard. I switch in type Null though, and after taking a Blizzard quite well actually, I take it out with a Crush Claw. Mr. Mime is up next, so I stay in, as we have the super effective X-Scissor which does good damage, as she just goes for Light Screen. She then goes for Psychic, but we hang on from that as well, and take it out with one more X-Scissor, and now we're down to her final Pokemon, Mawile. I switch in Typhlosion and go for the super effective Fire Punch, which leaves her on low health as she goes for a Thunder Fang, but it doesn't do much more than a scratch. So after she heals up the next turn, we can just hit 2 more Fire Punches for the win. That's 6 badges down already. Before moving on though, I actually talked to Ash here, who gives us a Meltan. Technically this is a legendary or a mythical, I'm not actually sure which one it's classified as, but I really want to use it on the team. I've never had the chance to use one of these before, so yeah, it's replacing type Null. Before we can move on much further though, we have to face Ash and Serena in a double battle. This took a couple of attempts, but we did manage to win, and I just really wanted to show off this Delcatty design, as it is actually really cool. I think it's a ghost type or something. I do some grinding with Meltan and get it up to level 40, where it finally evolves into Melmetal. With it, we actually have a fight with Zwigo. We haven't seen him for a while, probably been busy being worse than me. What? He starts off with an Umbreon, so I lead off with Venusaur, and I go straight for the Petal Dance, but it doesn't do anywhere near as much as I was expecting, and he gets a critical hit Foul Play. We do survive though, and then he uses a Toxic Orb for some reason, possibly for Synchronize, but it doesn't work on us as we're a Poison type, and we go down to 1 more Foul Play. I send in Golisopod though as he fully heals with the Hyper Potion, but our X's is doing more than half, so while we do get Toxic, we can just take it out with another one. Next up is Lycanroc, so I switch into Swampert, as we have the move Earthquake now, which is an easy one-hit KO after taking a Crunch. Incineroar is up next, so I go for another Earthquake, but he goes for Night Daze, which shows me that this isn't an Incineroar, but in fact a Zoroark. It takes us out in one hit, so I switch in Typhlosion and go for the Iron Head, as we just survive a Focus Blast. In return, Iron Head does some good damage, and Zoroark reveals itself. We do unfortunately get taken out by a Night Daze though, so I send in Golisopod once again, and just take it out with an X-Scissor. Type Null comes out next, so I switch into Decidueye, and go for the Low Sweep for small damage as he goes for the Swords Dance. He then goes for another one as I hit a Leaf Blade, which could be really terrifying, but instead of using a physical move, he just goes for Air Slash for some reason. Okay, I mean, fine, I'll take it. It goes down to a couple more Leaf Blades, and now we're down to his final Pokemon, which is the real Incineroar. He actually outspeeds us though and takes us out with a Flare Blitz, so I switch into our new Pokemon Melmetal, and go for the Thunder Wave as he sets up another Swords Dance. Thankfully we're faster and can hit a super effective Earthquake for good damage, but he hits back with an Earthquake of his own, which takes us out from full health. But now I can just switch in Golisopod once again, and because he's paralysed we're faster, so a single Razor Shell seals the deal, and we beat Zwigo once again. Now we can finally take on the 7th gym leader, Kiawe, I think that's how you say it. He starts off with an Arcanine, so I lead off with Swampert, and go for an Earthquake as he charges the Solar Beam. He does survive the Earthquake, and obviously I do not want to get hit by a Solar Beam, so I switch into Decidueye, who takes it like a boss, and then just take it out with a Sucker Punch from there. I switch in Swampert once again for a Alolan Marowak, and I just outspeed and go for an Earthquake, which leaves him on red health, as he hits back with an Earthquake of his own. Even though he gets a crit, we survive, and he just decides to heal up the next turn, but we're faster, so 2 Earthquakes take it out, and Turtonator's up next. I stay in and get 1 more Earthquake in for good measure, before finally going down to a Fire Blast. I switch in Typhlosion and finish it off with 1 more Earthquake, and switch into Golisopod for his own Typhlosion. This thing has an air balloon, so I can't use Earthquake on it yet, so I go for the Razor Shell instead, but we get burned by the Flare Blitz, which means it hardly does anything. We are able to pop the balloon though and do a small amount of damage with Sucker Punch before we go down, so now I can just switch in my own Typhlosion once again, and finish it off with a super effective Earthquake. Last up is Talonflame, so I switch in Melmetal, and all I really need to do here is paralyze it, so I go for the Thunder Wave, but he actually goes for Taunt. He then hits us with a powerful Flare Blitz, but we're tanky enough to survive the hit, and we retaliate with a Strength and get a critical hit as well, which means after he takes us out with 1 more Flare Blitz, he's in rough shape, so we can just switch into Typhlosion, who just about survives a critical hit Flare Blitz, and he almost takes himself out with Recoil, but then we can just finish it off with an Iron Head from there, winning us the 7th badge. There's just 1 more left to go. We haven't seen much from the evil team in this game. Instead of Team Plasma, it's actually Team Skull, and they're trying to take over the world with ice or something.
Oh no! Anyway.
Instead, let's take on the 8th and final gym leader, Lana. She starts off with a Chloritzer, so I lead off with Golisopod, and she sets up the rain straight away, which actually helps me. It activates my Swift Swim ability, which means that we can get some good damage with X-Scissor and then outspeed the next turn. It brings it down to red health though, and we survive the hydro pump. And of course she does heal up the next turn, but a few more X's see to it no problem. And next up is for Alligator. I stay in to take advantage of the rain, and get some decent damage in with another X-Scissor before going down to a Thunder. So I switch in Venusaur, who takes a Thunder like a champ, and just finish it off with a Petal Dance from there. Wishy-Washy's up next, and has the ability Drizzle. I go straight for another Petal Dance though to bring it down to red health, as she hits back with a Hydro Pump, which is actually enough to take us out, so I switch into Decidueye. I can just outspeed and take it out with a Leaf Blade, and next up is Primarina, so I stay in. Again I outspeed and Leaf Blade does huge damage, as she retaliates with an Ice Beam. Thankfully we just survived the hit though, and take it out with a second Leaf Blade, and I switch into Swampert for her final Pokemon Cloyster. This thing's special defense is really weak, so I go for Surf, as she actually makes us flinch with an Icicle Crash, and then she goes for Shell Smash. This is probably one of the best moves in the game, and makes this thing a terrifying sweeper. Thankfully though, she gets greedy, and actually goes for a second Shell Smash. This means her defenses get lowered quite a lot, and a Muddy Water brings it down to a sliver of health. She does unfortunately take us out the next turn though with another Icicle Crash, but I've got this in the bag now. Decidueye has the priority Sucker Punch, and she doesn't heal up, so it takes it out and we win ourselves the 8th and final gym badge. Before we can face the Elite Four though, there's some Team Skull stuff to deal with, but none of these fights were that difficult. We beat Faber easily enough, and then Colress once again, but the real challenging fight here was Lusamine. This was another insanely difficult fight, as she has a Genesect which basically just steamrolls through my entire team, so again I had to go and do some grinding before I could win this fight, but we do eventually get there. First up's Clefable, so I lead off with Decidueye, and I get some decent damage in with a low sweep, as she goes for Cosmic Power. I know that if I want to beat this thing I need to get a critical hit, and Leaf Blade has a high crit rate, so I just need to get lucky. The first one doesn't crit and then she heals back most of her health with Moonlight, but thankfully the second one does actually crit and takes it out from there. Next up is Noivern, so I swap into Swampert as we have the super effective Ice Beam, but she actually goes for the U-turn, which would have been a good play, but she switches into Mega Sceptile, a Pokemon 4 times weak to Ice. It brings it down to red health and then she goes for a full restore, but we get a better damage roll the second time, and it actually takes it out from full health, which I'm really glad about. A Mega could have caused some real issues. I switch in Typhlosion for her next Pokemon Meganium, which also has a regional form. This thing is Grass Ice, so it's 4 times weak to fire, so after we get hit by a Leech Seed I just go for a Fire Punch, which is basically a guaranteed one-hit KO. She sends out Beware next, so I switch into Decidueye, as we're immune to both normal and fighting. I go for the Leaf Blade for okay damage as she sets up a Swords Dance, and a second one brings her down to low health as she goes for the Earthquake. We survive easily enough though and take it out with one more Leaf Blade, and next up is Noivern once again. Melmetal resists both of her stab types, so we take even a critical hit Draco Meteor with health to spare, and start hitting weak Thunder Punches. With each Draco Meteor she's doing less and less damage, and she must be choiced or something if she doesn't go for any other move, so a barrage of Thunder Punches eventually take it out, and now all we need to do is beat this Genesect. I switch in Typhlosion as we have the 4 times super effective Fire Punch, and we do get outsped but she misses the Fire Blast. This means we can bring it down to its Focus Sash, and next turn she doesn't miss the Fire Blast but we actually hang on, which means we can take it out with one more, and finally beat Lusamine. This was definitely one of the most difficult fights so far. Now we can finally scale Victory Road, but before we can take on the Pokemon League, there's one more fight with Zwigo. He starts off with Incineroar, so I lead with Golisopod, but of course this isn't actually Incineroar. It's a Zoroark, but it doesn't matter, as it just goes down to one critical hit Crabhammer. Next up is Lycanroc, so I switch into Venusaur, and he actually misses the Stone Edge, which means I can bring it down to red health with a single Petal Dance, and after he fully heals up the next turn, we can take it out with 2 more after taking a Fire Punch. Now the real Incineroar comes out, so I stay in to take the Intimidate, and I try and go for an Earthquake, but we hit ourselves in Confusion, and we get taken out by a Flare Blitz. I switch in Golisopod once again as he goes for the Swords Dance this turn, which is scary, but we bring it down to red health with another Crabhammer, and I try and finish it off with a Sucker Punch, but he just hangs on, but then just goes for a Flare Blitz anyway, which we survive thanks to our item, and then he just takes himself out. Silvalley's up next, so I switch into Melmetal, and again for some reason he just keeps on going for Air Slash, which means we can just go for a few Thunder Punches, and that combined with the Life Orb recoil takes him out quite quickly actually. Next up is Umbreon, so I just stay in. And we do actually get the paralysis with Thunder Punch, which is nice. But we're just not dealing enough damage. And he keeps healing it back with Wish. So we eventually go down to a couple of foul plays. So I send in Golisopod once again. And go for the X-Scissor. It doesn't quite take it out, but he gets fully paralyzed, which means we can take it out with one more. And we're down to his final Pokemon, Weavile, who just goes for Slash with some small damage on Typhlosion. And we can take it out with a single Iron Head for the win. We beat Zwigo and now we can take on the Elite Four, so let's take a look at our final team. Honestly, I'm really happy with this selection of team members. Everyone plays their own role, and even though there's a couple of overlaps in types, I don't really have any complaints with this team whatsoever. Will it be enough to beat the Elite Four though? Well, that's another question entirely, but there's only one way to find out, so let's give it a go. First up is Acerola, I don't know, who starts off with a Bayonet, so I lead off with Typhlosion. I go for the Fire Punch and we actually just get a critical hit for an easy one-shot. And next up is Palossand, so I switch in Venusaur. I outspeed and go for a Petal Dance as always, and again it's actually just enough for a one-hit KO. Next up is Frostlass, so I switch into Melmetal, and go for the move Double Iron Bash, which not only is 100 base power, but it's also boosted by our ability Iron Fist, so you just know there's no way this Frostlass is surviving one of those. I switch in Venusaur once again for our next Pokemon Tapu Fini. Yes, she actually has a legendary, but it's not really a problem if she just goes for Taunt, which means we can go for a Petal Dance for huge damage and then she just decides to go for Scald. It hardly does anything, so we take it out with one more. And next up is Delmise. I switch in Typhlosion as we have the super effective Fire Punch, which again is a one-hit KO, and we're down to her final Pokemon, Mimikyu. I stay in and go for the Iron Head, as she hits a weak Thunderbolt, and we activate her Zen Mode ability. I'm not really sure if it actually does anything, but we survive another Thunderbolt, and just take it out with one more Iron Head for the win. That was a pretty easy first fight. Next up is Molayne, who uses Steel types, so this one shouldn't be too bad as we have Typhlosion. Bishop's up first and just goes down to a single Fire Punch, and next up is Alolan Sandslash. It does set up the Hail with Snow Warning, but it's 4 times weak to Fire Punch, so yes, that thing is very dead, and next up is his own Typhlosion, so I send in Swampert. He sets up the Swords Dance, but we can just go for the 4 times super effective Earthquake, which actually isn't a one-hit KO, but then the Hail that he set up earlier takes him out. I don't know why, I just find that really funny. I switch in Typhlosion once again for his next Pokemon Tapu Bulu. Are you starting to see a trend here? This thing's not scary though, as it's weak to Fire Punch, and again it just goes down to a single hit. Typhlosion really is proving its worth recently. Next up is Metagross, so again I just stay in and go for another Fire Punch, which it does survive and he hits back with a Hammer Arm, but we're able to survive the hit, and after he heals up we're just able to take it out with a Fire Punch and Earthquake, and his final Pokemon is a Magnezone, which is 4 times weak to Earthquake. I go for it and sure enough it's a one-shot, and that's half of the Elite Four dealt with already. The third member of the Elite Four is the Rock-type user Olivia. She starts off with a Relicanth, so I lead off with Decidueye, and go straight for the 4 times super effective Leaf Blade, which brings it down to its sturdy ability, as she thankfully misses a Head Smash, which definitely would have taken us out. She does of course fully heal with a full restore, so I go for a low sweep to get some damage in, and then just take it out with the second Leaf Blade. Lycanroc is up next, so I stay in, and go for another Leaf Blade as we get hit by a Rock Gem boosted Stone Edge. It does a lot of damage, but we do just survive, and in return our Leaf Blade brings it down to red health, so we can just go for the priority Sucker Punch to finish it off, and I switch in Swampert for our next Pokemon Arbok, which I think is Rock Dragon or something, I don't quite know this thing's typing. I go for the super effective Ice Beam, as we get hit by a massive Earthquake, but she's faster so she takes us out with one more, so I send in Golisopod. I go for the Razor Shell as she hits a Poison Tail, but it doesn't really do that much, and we're able to finish it off from there. Next up is Alolan Golem, so I just go for a Petal Dance with Venusaur, as we get hit by an Earthquake. It brings it down to low health, and we're just able to survive a second Earthquake, and take it out with the second Petal Dance, and next up is Tapu Lele. I switch in Melmetal once again, as she just goes for the weak hidden power, and I hit a Double Iron Bash which brings it down to low health. She just goes for another hidden power, so I take it out with another Double Iron Bash, and we're down to her final Pokemon Probopass. I go for the 4 times super effective Earthquake, and while we do get paralyzed we're able to bring it down to a Sliver, and we survive a super effective Earth Power the next turn, and one more Earthquake is all we need to secure the victory. Just one more Elite Four member to go before the champion. That being the fighting type user Hala, who was actually the most difficult Elite Four member by far, as my team isn't particularly good against fighting types. First up is Hariyama, so I start with a Golisopod, and for some reason his fake out doesn't make us flinch, I have no idea why, and I hit a Crab Hammer for good damage. I outspeed the next turn though and go for another one, and we just get a critical hit which takes it out from there. I switch in Venusaur for Conkeldurr, and I immediately poison it with a Toxic, which could be risky if this thing has guts, but I don't think it does, as we survive a payback with ease, and then I go for the boosted Venoshock, which brings it down below half. We survive the Stone Edge as well, which means that one more Venoshock takes it out, and next up is Poliwrath. I switch in Decidueye and go for the super effective Leaf Blade, as he goes for Toxic for some reason, and then he takes huge damage. A Sucker Punch isn't going to be enough to take it out, so I have no choice but to take a super effective Ice Beam, but we do actually survive with a respectable amount of health left, and take it out with a second Leaf Blade. Medicham is up next, so I switch in Golisopod once again, and go for a Crab Hammer, as we get hit by a massive Thunder Punch. We survive the hit but do get paralysed, but Crab Hammer still hits for good damage as well, and I'm almost able to take it out with a Sucker Punch the next turn, but he survives on a tiny sliver of health, and just takes us out with a Zen Headbutt, so I switch in Melmetal. This may seem like a risky strategy, but I know he's going to heal up, so I go for the Double Iron Bash hoping it's enough to KO, and it actually probably wouldn't have been, but we get a critical hit on the first of the two hits, so the second one is easily enough to finish it off, and next up is Beware. I send Venusaur back in and go for the Petal Dance, and it actually does way more than I was expecting, but we get taken out by an Earthquake, but this means I can just send in Decidueye, and clean up with a Leaf Blade. He's down to his final Pokemon, which is Tapu Koko, so Swampert's basically the perfect counter for this. We have the super effective Earthquake, which after surviving a Dazzling Gleam leaves him on a tiny amount of health, and to add insult to injury for him, we get the Quick Claw boost as well. This means we move first, and finish off the Tapu Koko, winning us the final match of the Elite Four, so now all we need to do is beat the champion. But who is the champion, you ask? Well, it's the person you'd least expect. It's actually Ash. I don't know how I feel about this, but I guess I'm happy for him that he finally managed to become the champion. He starts off with Decidueye, which actually threw me off, as I was expecting Pikachu. Because of this I led off with Swampert. I immediately switch out into Typhlosion, who takes a Leaf Blade with ease, and I can just outspeed and take it out with a single Fire Punch, and I switch back into Swampert for his next Pokemon Incineroar. It lowers my attack with Intimidate, so I go for Surf instead of Earthquake, and it does a respectable amount of damage, as he just goes for Swords Dance. Thankfully one more Surf is enough to finish it off before he can attack, and I switch in Venusaur once again for his next Pokemon Pikachu. I switched out because I was expecting a Grass Knot or something. I mean, why else would he switch it into a Swampert? I have the Earthquake, which does some decent damage after we get hit by a Double Edge, leaving him on red health, so even though he heals up, we can bring it back down to low health with another Earthquake, and then just take another Double Edge. Even with a crit we survive with 5 health left, and now we can just finish it off. Next up is Naganadel, which is a name I've never had to say out loud, so I switch into Melmetal as we resist his moves, as he goes for the Beast Boost to raise his attack, defense and speed. This could have been terrifying, but we get a critical hit on the Double Iron Bash, which thankfully takes out from full health. I really feel like we dodged a bullet there. Next up is his own Melmetal though, so I switch into Swampert once again, as we have the super effective Earthquake. It does just under half and his own Earthquake does about the same, but thankfully we're faster, so we're able to bring it down to low health with the second one, and after surviving one more of his own Earthquakes, we can take it out with one more and now we're down to his final Pokemon. That being Lycanroc Dusk form, but we have Decidueye at full health, so things are looking pretty good for us. He sets up a Swords Dance, which was probably the worst thing he could have done, as we can hit back with a Leaf Blade which leaves him on a sliver of health, and he doesn't decide to heal up, and goes for the Fire Fang. It does take us out, but he has a Life Orb. This means he knocks himself out, and just like that we win. We beat Ash, and beat Pokemon Moon Black 2 using only gift Pokemon. Well, that was definitely a fun challenge. It's been a while since I've done a gift Pokemon run, so it was really nice to go back to that format for this, and I've got to say, I am really impressed with this ROM hack. Sure, there were a couple of issues here and there, what with the fairy type being poorly implemented, and I did have a couple of glitches here and there, but I absolutely have to give the creators of this game credit for the amazing job they did on the animated sprites. Honestly, this must have taken so long to get right, and honestly, a lot of these sprites look like they could have been made by Game Freak themselves. Seriously, I'm impressed. Talking about the team for a second, I was really impressed with this team overall. There wasn't a single bad team member, but I think it was quite clear going through this game that the regional form of Typhlosion was just definitely the best member of the team by far. It was seriously amazing, and I thought the design was really cool as well. If you guys enjoyed this video, then please consider hitting that like button and hitting that red subscribe button if you're new. Once again, thank you so much to Dragon City for sponsoring today's video. Try the game out for yourself and remember to click the link in the description to get your free food, free coins, and rare Fire Knight Dragon. That's pretty much all I've got for you today, so as always, thank you all so much for watching. Until next time.